Marlene Liebeskind. The title of her presentation is The Technological Challenges to Fulfill the Water Framework Directive. Today, Ms. Liebeskind is head of the Department of River Development and River Maintenance, the Wupper Water Association, Wupperverband in Germany. And she's responsible for the implementation of the Water Framework Directive in the catchment area of the River Wupper, an integrated management model. Previously, she had been a managing director of a water laboratory. Her studies had been ecology, microbiology, and civil engineering. She's holding a university degree, Master of Science of the RWTH Aachen, and a PhD also with the title Parameters of the Dynamic Simulation of Municipal Wastewater Treatment Plants. So, Ms. Liebeskind, the floor is then yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Raymond. We'll jump right into practical challenges regarding the implementation of the Water Framework Directive. These are the 7 points that we are going to cover today. And I'm going to come back to these different points, but I'm going to start with the first one, the Wupper Water Association. The Wupper Water Association is an association of 22 municipalities, 200 companies, and 5 water suppliers. And they manage the catchment of the River Wupper. That's an area of approximately 800 square kilometers, so that's not such a large area. The main river is, of course, the River Wupper. We've got a lot of minor water courses. We've got a lot of precipitation, 1,100 millimeters per year. That's quite a lot. But on the other hand, we have almost no groundwater. We've got 1,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. That's really densely populated. For example, in Sweden, you've got 22 inhabitants per square kilometer. So we're much more dense in population. And we manage this catchment by 11 wastewater treatment plants, 15 reservoirs for flood control and drinking water supply. We maintain our rivers, and we've started to reverse engineer and restore our water bodies according to the Water Framework Directive and the River Basin Management Plan. Here you can see the geographical location. Here you can see the catchment area of the River Rhine in orange, and this little red dot here, this is the River Wupper catchment area. That's where we are at the moment. Here you can see the ecological status. In 2007, that was the first official monitoring. And then in 2016, that's the last available official monitoring in our area. And you can see that the status has improved, that there are hardly any more red lines in 2016. You can see the River Wupper, which is this large red line here on the left-hand side. That has improved significantly. It's become yellow, and some parts are still orange. But of course, there's still quite a lot of work to do, as you can see. The question is, what is the context of this monitoring status? Why is it not better? There I have to go back into history to 1817 to a German engineer named Tuller. And he started the straightening of the River Rhine. And here in the upper picture, you can see what he did. He cut through all these meanders, and he turned the river of 1,000 islands into a shipping canal. You can see the difference here. And he completed the task in 1882. And they were also fond of the results that they did that with the other rivers as well. And this is the River Wupper. You can see it here on the right-hand side, how it looks today. And on the left-hand side, you can see an old meander. That's exactly the same area here. And you can see how it once looked and how it looks today. And they did it even with smaller rivers. You can see it up here. So for 200 years, German rivers were deepened and channeled between embankments. The channels were narrowed, new sections were dug to straighten out the meanders, islands were removed, and the river's lengths were significantly reduced. And then houses, roads, and industrial complexes were built on the former floodplains, which makes it quite difficult to change. On top of that, in 1820, in Wuppertal, we had the early industrialization with extreme water pollution. So in 1840, already all the fish died out. The Wupper was then called the Black River, Europe's dirtiest river, and only bacteria and fungi remained. And this is where we are now at this River Wupper. In 1906, so some decades later, the first wastewater treatment plant was built and then followed by 10 more wastewater treatment plants. Only in 1984, like 160 years later, the first fish then returned and some insects and shrimp. In 1990, we built the nitrification and denitrification stages and the phosphate removal stages at our wastewater treatment plants. And in 2000, we finally reached the good status according to the German Saprobic Index. So the maps turned mainly green. We were very happy about that. But of course, the structural status had stayed unchanged because that was just the Saprobic Index. Also in 2000, the Water Framework Directive came into force, and immediately our maps changed back to red, to black, to bad status, because the ecological status is now important and many fish, plants, algae, etc. are still missing because of the structures. So this was the start of reverse engineering of many German rivers. So where do we want or need to be? Of course, we need to be in a good status in 2027, so everything should be green or blue. And what's our strategic concept to implement the Water Framework Directive? That's these 4 points: cooperation and information of stakeholders, geographical information system-based plan to show the status, all the necessary measures, and with updates, all the improvements, financing the implementation, of course, by decisions of our members, and a priority concept of blue challenges. I'm just going to talk about the last point because we don't have so much time. So I'm just going to show a little, some photos from our stakeholder process. 27 workshops were organized. This is our updatable open GIS project. It's called Wupper Implementation Schedule. Here you can see all the measures. And we come directly to the priority concept of blue challenges. So we've got 7 priorities. The first, of course, is the organic pollution, wastewater, the nutrients and oxygen levels. And this is of course the #1 priority. This is the most important because if you don't solve this problem, then you can't see the others. It makes no sense to deal with the others if this is not solved. We're quite far with this one. You can see the completed measures in green and the measures that need implementation in red. And you can see we're quite far with this one. You can also see it on the map. What's happened now? It's not moving. Can you help me?
No, I'll try.
Thank you. Yeah. Here you can see the next map, and you can see that this is almost all green now. So we're quite far with this one. The next priority is the river connectivity. That's a 50-50 situation, improvement of fish migration. And on the next slide, you can see we did a register and we measured all our obstacles for fish migration. And you can see, although this is not such a large area, it's only 800 square kilometers, we found almost 1,000 obstacles for fish migration. This is because it's densely populated. Here you can see what we did with those. We started to remove dams and weirs. We built fish passes and fish ladders, and we have improved 50 sites so far, but there's still quite a way to go. On the right-hand side, you can see some of our projects. down here, this long thing, this is the second largest fish ladder in the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia. It's 133 meters long, and we've got some quite big ones here as well. And well, that's just some examples. So we've had success in upstream and downstream connectivity in some stretches. The long stretch here, 50 kilometers, that's all connected. That's really good. And then we've got some bits and pieces up here. There's a big gap here. And why is that? Well, that's because of our hydropower problem. We were able to remove this hydropower plant. So this is all connected up and downstream. And this hydropower plant, they became fish friendly. They built a large fish ladder and they've built a fish protection device. But it all was very, very expensive, as you can see, and they almost had to close. They almost failed. So the others are very reluctant to go there now because it's very expensive. Yeah, there's currently no enforcement by law in place to force owners to comply to the Water Framework Directive, and the hydropower lobby is very strong. And unfortunately, the de minimis regulations of the EU forbid sufficient funding for fish ladders and fish protection devices. I've shown you that these come at, for example, 1.6 million euros, but the de minimis regulations allow only for 200,000 euros of funding. And this problem is unsolved so far. So we don't really know how to get past this. Water temperature, also a very high priority because it's large stretches of river that are affected. We've solved it by 75%, 25% still missing. Here you can see the water temperatures in the year 2000. We've got 2 coal-fired power plants, and the river was far too warm, 27 degrees in summer. That's a death verdict for trout, salmon, and grayling. And this is a grayling area, so these are all species that should live here. Then we've got a large reservoir down here, and that was discharging from the bottom layer, and that was far too cold because in the summer it's 4 to 6 degrees centigrade down there. So the whole river downstream was too cold. It was eternal winter, and only trout could survive, and the other 22 species died out. Then we've got another large reservoir that's too cold in spring and too warm in autumn. So this is the current situation. We did a research project with this power plant, and they became much better. This power plant failed because of market pressure. It had to close. And with this reservoir, we could invent something. We call it a thermo trunk with European funding. And this is a device that instead of discharging from the bottom layer, the cold bottom layer, we can pick the water from higher layers, and we can match it to the natural water temperatures. And you can see the device in the photo. And you can see here in this slide, the natural water temperature above the reservoir in red, and the water temperature below the reservoir formerly, and you can see it is almost all below 10 degrees. Sometimes only for 2 days it went up to 10, and then the most of the time it stayed like 6 to 7 degrees. And this is the building phase, and now we've got a perfect match with the natural temperatures with this device. So this device works really, really well. Structure, priority number 4, 38% done, 62% still to go. You can see it in the next slide. Down below, you can see all these little pictures, all the hydromorphological measures, 1,100 hydromorphological measures that have to be implemented. And up here, you can see what they are about. This is removal of a pond. This is structural improvement. This is fixation, get out the fixation, and this is removal of a hydropower plant. So all these 1,100 hydromorphological measures have to be implemented. There's a problem. The federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia owns the free-flowing water, but it does not own the riverbed, the riverbanks, or the fish. These belong to thousands of private owners and companies. And because the water law is weak in comparison to property law in Germany, this is problematic for the implementation of the Water Framework Directive because the stakeholder rights are very, very strong. You can't just walk onto the plot of private owners or companies and implement hydromorphological measures. They have to agree to that, and sometimes they don't want to. I'm not going to talk about these priorities because we don't have the time and we've just started with these priorities, so there's not so much to talk about. To conclude, our blue challenges are land purchase, especially riverbanks and riverbeds. We've got a lot of funding from the federal state, but we've got missing legal support. For example, the right of first refusal is missing. Reverse engineering of channeled rivers. We've got a lot of funding, but it's a difficult process. We've got very many stakeholders. And the question is really, can 200 years of human development in densely populated areas be reverse engineered in 27 years? I think that's a bit much. Then we've got the so-called old water rights. These are rights from 1716 or something. They have no limitation of duration, so they're never updated. And yeah, there's also missing legal support with those. They are not really touched by the authorities, well, at least at the moment. Then we've got the de minimis restrictions on funding hydropower to become fish friendly. There I see a bit of missing support from the EU. And we've got the lack of policy alignment between the Common Agricultural Policy and the Water Framework Directive. We've seen all these greening measures lately, but they are unaligned with the Water Framework Directive. So there are no measures for riverbanks, for riverbeds, for water. There's hardly anything for water in there. And I think this is very sad, and it's a missed opportunity because these are the regions, the areas where we could improve the rivers the most. And so it would have been nice if they would have been included in the greening measures. So I see here perhaps not enough support from the EU. Of course, the progress of good status in Germany is not so big at the moment, but the progress of good status in other European countries is equally small. So the question is, should not the EU Commission have prolonged the Water Framework Directive, knowing that the progress in all the member states is small in 2015? But of course, I know why they did not want to go there. So the way forward, I think the Water Framework Directive is a brilliant piece of legislation. It relates to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, number 6, clean water, number 14, life below water, and number 12, responsible consumption. I think the Water Framework Directive is very ambitious from a German perspective. Legal support in some areas is still missing, especially concerning property rights. And the cooperation with thousands of property owners is a slow way. And I think the Water Framework Directive should be extended for 2 more 6-year terms. And to conclude with 4 pictures, this is an urban area before the implementation of the Water Framework Directive. This is actually Wuppertal. And here is the same area, the same view after implementation of the Water Framework Directive. And I think it's a huge improvement on the quality of life for people living in the city, especially now during lockdown. And here you can see a rural area before implementation, and then you can see a rural area after implementation. And I think this is also much more beautiful. And you can see these steep banks. And because our kingfishers love these steep banks, I'll conclude with a picture of a kingfisher. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Liebeskind. How are there questions in the audience?
Thanks, Ms. Liebeskind, for this very interesting talk and your impressive effort in the river Wupper. I think that was quite nice to see all the things you have achieved there. But I thought one thing struck me a little bit, because you said something about the hydropower lobby was very strong, and that is a barrier, of course. But you know, we haven't got any hydropower in Denmark, but we think that hydropower is a good thing. So that must be a real dilemma somehow, or what?
Yeah, I think this is a dilemma because also renewable energy is really a good thing, and it's good to prevent climate change. And at the same time, if they are not equipped with fish ladders or fish passes and fish protection devices, they also are a problem for migrating fish, because if they get into these turbines, they're just cut into pieces. Yeah, so they are not so well equipped to survive this roundabout. And yeah, that's a real problem. And if they don't get funding for this, especially the small ones, because they don't make so much energy, yeah, there's just it's a problem that's still unsolved so far. I don't know how to solve it without more funding. And yeah.
So there are measures to be taken to combine the two priorities, you could say, to have more, still have hydropower, but also maybe, you know, align with the Water Framework Directive.
It's just expensive. You can perfectly align these two, or perhaps not perfectly, but very much so. But it's a question of funding these fish protection devices, and because they're so incredibly expensive. And
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot for that.
We have another question from Lara. I will read it to you, Marlene. Did you consider the invasive plants issue on the riverbanks when you implemented the Water Framework Directive, as some could actually weaken the riverbanks in the long run, among other things?
Yeah, this is a large issue at our place. Unfortunately, the Japanese knotweed has taken over the riverbanks of most of our rivers completely, like almost 100%. And but we're a very hilly area, and so the flooding concerns are not, because the rivers are quite steep. We don't have so many flooding concerns that are related to this Japanese knotweed. Of course, it weakens the banks, and yeah, and it has exchanged all the natural plants along the rivers, which is really sad. But we can't do anything about it because it's so resistant, and it's almost 100% now. So we've kind of given up on Japanese knotweed. There's an experiment going on, I think, in the city of Amsterdam at the moment. They are trying to introduce some insects that might eat the Japanese knotweed. We are very interested in the outcome of this experiment, but at the moment we have run out of ideas how to deal with this knotweed problem.
I have another question. You said that the ownership of the riverbanks and the riverbed, it's a problem. Is there a solution foreseen at short time, or at the moment not?
At the moment, unfortunately not. We're dealing with it by cooperating or trying to cooperate with the owners, and we're, I would say, halfway successful with that. We were able to make approximately 100 hectare available for riverbank improvement, but still 100 hectare in such a large area is not so much, and it just takes a lot of time to talk to everybody and to make them all agree to that, because they are used to how it has been looking for the last 3-5 decades, and most people don't like to change things, and especially if they don't really know how it's going to look afterwards. They're quite reluctant to do that. So it takes a lot of time and effort and talking to convince them. And the good thing is, if you have examples where you have already done it, like with these photos, then they get a better idea of how it might look, and then it's more easy to convince them.
Okay, thank you very much. it's a little bit the same thing in Luxembourg here.
Yeah.
Our land prices are even very high, so it's much more difficult. Same issue as in Germany. Thank you, Ms. Liebeskind, and we will then continue with Ms. Sabine Schellens. Her presentation is about the human challenges to fulfill the Water Framework Directive. Ms. Schellens is working since 2004 at Aquafin. First was responsible for internal and external communication, and since 2030 manager of human resources and organization development, covering talent development, human resources office, and communications. In addition, she's general manager of Aqua Plus. It's a daughter company of Aquafin, offering tailor-made solutions for all facets of water treatment in the industry. For those who don't know Aquafin, it's a water operator in Flanders. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for introducing me. And I will immediately start with my presentation. And the idea is to demonstrate that the wastewater sector Aquafin is working in is a really exciting and challenging sector, not only for what we do, but also for who is working in it. And I do think that there's a lot of ongoing, and we are aware that the choices we will have to make for the future will have an impact on each of us, be it our immediate environments or as well as population groups. And to make good choices, it is important to have a clear vision as a company. And Aquafin has a clear vision. And we go for clean water courses for future generations and the living environment in harmony with water. And this vision makes it possible to set out strategies, but also to look for partnerships outside the company. And third of all, most important, and also the topic for today, this vision makes it possible to attract, to guide, and to stimulate employees and also new people that want to work in our sector and for the company. Because we need people if we want to challenge and to cope with the challenges of the future, the challenges of wastewater business. It is important that people want to work for our business. And before to go a little bit further into the talents we needed for the future, I will tell you a little bit more about Aquafin. Aquafin is a private company that was founded by the Flemish government in the early 90s. And at that moment, the task was to build, to finance, to operate, and to maintain wastewater infrastructure for domestic wastewater. And at that time, only 70%, only 70% of the wastewater, wait a minute, I will go it, excuse me, yeah, we'll put it. Roll again. No. Only 70% of the wastewater was treated before it went into the water courses. So at that moment, we had a lot of stinking rivers and streams in Flanders, and there was almost no more aquatic life. Meanwhile, in these 30 years, we had a lot of investments, and we do have now more than 300 wastewater treatment plants. We have more than 1,800 pumping stations, and we do have more than 6,000 kilometers of pipes. Aquafin is an employer of more than 1,000 FTEs, and today we are able to treat 85% of the wastewater before it goes into the water courses. Of course, we are not yet there. This 15% still has to be done, and that's not only the job for Aquafin, this is also the job for the municipalities with whom we work together, because they are responsible for collecting wastewater at the individual households. But we are happy that we are now already at 85%, but not happy at all because there is still this 15% to go, of course. On the other hand, Aquafin not only stands for wastewater treatment, because we saw that next to its core activities, during the years, Aquafin steadily adopted also new insights and technological developments. You see this on this slide because we understood that the wastewater treatment process has a lot of potential in terms of recovery and reuse of valuable materials contained in the wastewater. And that is, and that is how we increasingly also focused on expanding our treatment infrastructure to partially become recycling plants. And on this slide, you see some examples of products that we have investigated and currently also apply at a large scale. So of course, wastewater is reused afterwards also to replace drinking water. It is also an important source for nutrients in case of phosphorus, carbon, cellulose, and it's also used to produce energy, biogas, used for electricity production with biogas, and the sludge pellets are used for co-incineration. So we have seen that the wastewater infrastructure is no longer only used for wastewater treatment, but it has really become a recycling plant. As concerns the option to recover heat present in wastewater directly from sewers, this is a relatively new topic that needs more innovation. And we have already developed a business model, and now we are adapting it into a new business plan. But we expect that this first full-scale demonstrations for heat recovery will be present as from next year. As concerns being smart with water, Aquafin has made also some developments during the years. Because we saw that there was digital evolution and digital revolution. And we also saw we were confronted with climate change. Because also Flanders, and not only the south part of Europe, but also Flanders, more and more experiences the impact of climate change with short-term heavy rainfall and long-term droughts. And this also impacts, of course, our daily operations. And to cope with these, we are already expanding our knowledge on modeling and control with new innovative smart concepts that are aimed at smart use and smart infrastructure use to make our operations, to make our infrastructure more climate resilient. And in this slide, you see 3 examples that we have elaborated in past years, recently in fact. And the first one is a place where we have made a combination of drainage, buffering and infiltration of rainwater while also creating amenity value for the children in the as a playground. And we have made a website which is called blaugroenvlaanderen.be, where a lot of other inspiring examples are shown to make clear for governments, to make clear for local policymakers that they can work out the same ideas as shown on this picture. Another example is that we also have a smart use of the available buffer capacity in private rainwater buffer tanks. This is in fact a rather new project. It's called ActiPut. It's still an innovative project, in fact, where we want to store rainwater temporarily, and afterwards we want to reuse it. We want to reuse it afterwards when the heavy rain is gone. So then we really want to work together with private persons, with citizens, that they give us an opportunity to store rainwater and afterwards it can be reused. And the last example is that we go for the smart use of sewer capacity in large sewer networks to reduce the overflows of combined sewers during a heavy rain. So a couple of examples where we show that Aquafin is not longer only the company for wastewater, but also transform itself into a recycling plant and also smart with water now. The continuous evolutions of Aquafin and the water sector also goes together with new challenges from society. And Keith Hayward already mentioned it, and I think I can follow his ideas, that there are certainly some new challenges coming from society and that will have an impact on the water business. And on the left side of this slide, you see all the challenges that we think that will be important for the water business in future. And on the right side, you see how we have to react, how we have to respond to all these new challenges. And I can see three categories, in fact. The first category has to do with innovation, has to do with technology, has to do with techniques. We have to tackle micropollutants, we have to reduce our energy consumption, and so on. I do see also another category, which has to do more with the impact of the digital world. We have to implement smart water. We have to go for Internet of Things, real-time control. And then I do see also a third group of influence, and that has everything to do with stakeholders. We have to manage more and more stakeholders than we did in the past, and we have to listen to their voices, to their ideas, because this all has also an influence on the water business. So these new challenges from society have certainly an impact also on how we organize water business. And we do think that the broad answer to all these challenges is to move from technical activities towards more sustainable solutions. Sustainable solutions that not only have the aim to generate clean water courses, but also the aim to create a robust urban and water environment. So it's a big change that we have been gone through and that will continue for the future. Of course, this path, there will still be boundary conditions. And as we think of boundary conditions, there are boundary conditions when you think of budgets. When the costs are arising, there will still be budget that will be at the constraint. We have to be compliant, of course, with European directives, but not only with European directives, also with other legislation. And we have to look for a systems approach. This is important to keep in our minds that when we go to the path for more sustainable solutions, it will always be within these boundaries conditions. And we are already on this path. We think with Aquafin that we are here. And I think I can show this with the examples I've shown previously. And in this path, we went through collecting and treating of wastewater, and then we went through the consideration of environmental impacts of infrastructure and operations. We went for cost efficiency, and now upgrading and renovating is also a hot topic. But we even have to go further. We have to go for sustainable solutions, which are nature-based. Previous speakers have also talked about this. We have to go for blue-green infrastructure. Beautiful examples in the presentation of Marlene. Resource efficiency, based on life cycle assessment. Smart solutions, new technologies, small scale and people-oriented. So a lot of new parameters come along in this water business, which we have to take care for and which we have to take into account. In this, research and innovation stays important for Aquafin, but also for our business. And it will be growing over time as more diverse knowledge and more innovation will be needed to be sure that we can take the gap of these sustainable solutions. But it's what is necessary also. We will see that with this path, also the number of stakeholders have become more important. In the beginning, Aquafin was mostly dealing with the regulator, with the government, with contractors, with banks. But more and more, we were confronted with also with other stakeholders, as there were policymakers, environmental organizations, and other sectors. And now we have consumers, citizens, local policymakers and organizations, sustainable investors that also have their ideas on how we have to organize wastewater, the wastewater business, and everything which is related to wastewater and to water as a whole. So much more stakeholders are involved, and it's also important that we listen to them and that we have an open mind to observe also their ideas on how we have to organize and how we have to search for solutions. And together with this number of growing stakeholders, we see that also we see also the change in the skills of the staff we need. Because in the beginning, we were looking at Aquafin at mainly technical and financial profiles. And afterwards, it was also planning, costs. People had to take care of the planning, and they had to be cost efficient, and they had to be aware of data collection. And now we see that the people that work for Aquafin, but also in our sector, they have to think of new solutions that are nature-based. They have to create an area-wide vision. They have to be able to go on to work with digitalization. They have to be able to communicate, to cooperate, to make reports. So a lot of new skills are now hot topic for the people that are working for Aquafin and in our sector. And what is then the vision of Aquafin to attract people that are able to deal with this complete new context? Because it is clear, this is the way to go, and adapting and changing and anticipating will be the guiding principle for the future. I'm sure about that. I am convinced about that. So we have to think what will be the future skills that the people working for Aquafin or working in the water sector will need. And then we have elaborated a clear vision on this. And this vision, I can show it in this slide. Aquafin's vision is that if we are to provide solutions to the complex changes that our sector is going to face, we need to attract and to develop a highly diverse and heterogeneous population. Because heterogeneity makes room for complementarity, whereby solutions arise from a multitude of valuable insights. So attracting, appreciating, and stimulating a heterogeneous population will, through the creation of smart teams, help to realize our vision. Not only to realize our vision, but it will also pay off for the sector, and it will also pay off for the environment. We believe in these future-proof smart teams that are diverse and that are established by deployment of inclusive, untapped potential. And this is how we want to create future teams of talented people. And how are we going to do this? We are going to hire for ambition, attitude, and ability. Ambition, attitude, and ability, where of course technical skills will still be important. Technical skills, experience, and knowledge will still be important. Besides cognitive abilities, and also besides the personality of a person, because it's important to also to know the motives and the values the person is living for. That is important when you recruit someone. But what will we do also? We will set up our own keys, our own skill sets that will be important for every Aquafin employee. And the skill sets means that we will, it's still work in progress, but I will explain this a little bit later. We will look for people that are able to think solution-oriented, to think in solutions, and to be able to communicate, to connect with the outside world, able to connect with all the stakeholders we have mentioned, or I have mentioned before. And people that have a growth mindset, people that are able to learn, but also to unlearn. And so we have solutions-driven communication skills, and the ability to learn will be important for the future when working in the water sector. Besides this, we have also the Aquafin key, and we call 5 parameters important for this for our future employees, and that is agility. Agility, change agility, mental agility, people agility, results agility, and self-awareness. And I will still quickly explain what I mean with these 5 components of agility. Change agility means that you have to have a constant curiosity for the unknown. You have to find pleasure when trying things out, and that is key to adapt to change, in my opinion. A mental agility is the ability to think outside the box and to understand things in a different way, and to recognize other patterns in a complexity. Important for innovation and for the complex solutions we have to find and we have to search for. People agility is having a constructive attitude towards others and being open to people with different backgrounds and opinions. Also necessary to create support among all the stakeholders we will meet. And results agility is a strong need to be successful and always looking for the best way to achieve results. And this is of course then again important when you look at budget constraints of also compliancy requirements. So we do need this agility, and we do need self-awareness, and self-awareness is key in this whole story, because people who know themselves and know their weaknesses, their strengths, they are better they're better in learning, they're better in communicating, they are better in finding solutions. So this is the basis, of course, to be strong in all the rest. This is work in progress. We know that we have to go in this way. Heterogeneous groups, diverse, with this set of skills, this will be important for the future, to be sure that we can cope with all the challenges there are in the water sector. This is not ready yet, because this is still too fluid, and we have to go to a framework which will be clear for every person that works with Aquafin. We have to go now, we have to make it more specific and define very well for every function in Aquafin what it means, so that every co-worker sees, okay, that's the way I have to develop, that's the way how I have to elaborate my development program, my learning program, and that also our recruitment department knows, okay, this is the set of skills we are hiring, and that is the way we have to go. So it's a basis for us to grow, to make our people grow, and also to make our company grow. But this will take some time. We are not there yet, and that's why, I don't know, do I still have time, because I see it's 4 o'clock.
Yes, I think you have some time.
You have still time, yes.
Yes, okay. I don't know whether my time was limited, so I will try to hurry. So I know the way we are going here is a long time vision. The 1,000 people that work at Aquafin for the moment will not have these skills immediately. And that is why we also decided that we have already to take decisions now that will have an influence, a good influence on the training of these skills. And what did we do? We have set up an innovation hub, and an innovation hub is a set of startups that work besides the big Aquafin boat, and the Aquafin boat, that's a good vessel which is reliable and it holds its course, but it's more difficult when change is arriving, and then it's more difficult to follow this change. And that's why we started with this innovation hub, where a lot of small speedboats are able to work out already innovative concepts next to this big boat of Aquafin. They can try out new ideas, new concepts that are not yet in this organization, and there they can already train the skills that we need for the future. Because how does it work? It works like this. So we put startup teams into the corporate structure, and we give them the opportunity to explore new ideas and services that are not relevant for the current operations and services. Dedicated teams that can already talk with a lot of stakeholders, that they can challenge the market, they can think and rethink and overthink their new products and services. And once we see it is successful, once we see that we do have return on investment, we will implement this in the organization. But this new method with Innovation Hub, and startup mentality introducing in our company, we are able to taste already the new skills that are needed for the future and for the future wastewater business. And so afterwards, when a product or an idea or a service is successful, we will be able to roll it out and in the organization through the business implementation manager, and it will become business as usual afterwards. In fact, this is a little bit my story. So the story is that when we look at the future and when we look at talent for the future, we think we have to go for a wide, diverse population, where a lot of skills that are not only technical have to be elaborated, thinking of solutions, solution-oriented, communication, learn and unlearn. By doing so, by training them already in a small start-up mentality, a start-up community, they will learn these skills bit by bit, and then slowly our company will grow in this direction. But what is important also is that the wastewater business will employ many more people the next coming years. So it's our task to put the wastewater business as an interesting and an exciting business on the agenda. We have to publicize the wastewater sector as interesting for careers, for job opportunities. And that is why I was very happy to be present today at your EWA conference, that I could, together with you, put talents and talent for water on the agenda. And I think it will be important that in future we work together with schools, universities, governments, private and public organizations, and then we will be successful, and then we will be sure that we will find the people necessary to cope with all the challenges our business has to make and take. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to answer all your questions.
Okay, thank you. Regarding this slide, I've immediately a question. Your school system is delivering appropriate candidates, and are you even now in touch with the schools or the ministries to influence on future programs?
Yes. The first question, on your first question, I have to answer no. Our schools don't deliver people that know what is a water business or working in the wastewater business. They do not know. So we have to train our own people when they start working at Aquafin. And what we are doing now, we work together already with schools and universities. In Flanders, it's called duaal leren. That means that the student can go to school and at the same time also work in a company. So 50% of the time goes following lessons at school, and 50% it's in the company. And we work already together with some schools so that they also learn our sector, our techniques, our technologies, but also the challenges we are facing. And then our examples also, yes, students that have to make master proof and so on, they come they work together with Aquafin, and so they learn, they get to know, to learn the company and also the things we are working on. So yes, we start working together with schools and universities, and we have also started an Aquafin Academy 2 years ago, where the skills that you need, but then we specifically think of the technical and the technological skills, where we have an Aquafin Academy that you can learn these technical and technological skills in-house, and that we provide for new people starting at Aquafin.
Okay, you mentioned this dual mode schooling. We know that also in Luxembourg, but at the moment it's rather limited on handcrafts level, not further on. How is that in Flanders? It's this dual mode schooling system.
Yeah.
Partly in the company and partly in school. It's only in handcrafts level. So
Yes, that's true, because also for us, it is already, we start with this for our operators. The more technical and the more technical profiles, the people that work on our wastewater treatment plants. But I do see that it's also starting for more administrative business and so on, but not yet for the other profiles. That is true. It's still elaborating, but it's still very small. It's also in Flanders, that's true.
Sabine, I would like to ask you a question. You are talking about these new skills, you know, solution orientation, communication, and how to learn and unlearn. And I'm thinking these are soft skills, some of them, and normally quite difficult to assess. So do you have a strategy in Aquafin on how to assess these skills? How do you know when they are there? You know, when you have reached the level that you wanted in order to implement your strategy?
That's a good question, because yes, we do have already some assessments, and certainly for certain profiles, we do try to work together with companies that challenge people on their their agility, in fact, to cope with change, to cope with other people's ideas and so on. But we think we still have to grow in this also, and to find a better way, certainly also to reassure people how they can grow in a certain way, and to give them the tools to grow. And then I think then it's also the HR business has still to grow into how can we measure these soft skills, and how can we see that people are growing in this. But the best way of seeing this is, for example, with this Innovation Hub, the people that are into this creative teams and they are open for this experiences, there you see what they are worth, and you learn also a lot on the job, and to give people the opportunity on the job by also in working groups or in a complete different environments, they get also stronger in the skills we need. So it's a combination of elaborating tools that we don't have yet, a little bit, but not enough, and then the experimentation on the floor, on the job.
Thank you. We have a question also here from Monica.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah. So first of all, thank you, Sabine, for this great presentation. So honestly, to me, it's the first time that I really hear an HR person talking about, in these kind of forums. So I'm really inspired that somebody starts to think that we also need people to make all our, sustainability goals and whatever we like to reach. We need people for that. So I'm really inspired here. Thank you. And I was wondering if you are planning to do this, all by yourself, Aquafin alone, or are you planning also to find alliances to make this happen, recruitment and talent development, maybe on a broader scale, or is it just you, trying to find the new people?
No, not at all. Because I'm very fond of partnerships and alliances. So I do believe that we have to work together. And for me, example, schools and universities are first example, but also with organizations that are able to find other profiles than the profiles we are founding now. You have a lot of engineers that apply at Aquafin, and that's good. And we want to keep engineers applying for jobs at Aquafin, that is clear. But we also are looking for complete other profiles that we also need. And there we have to work together with organizations that are able to influence also these people to look at our website and to look into the opportunities in our sector. So we certainly have to work together with other organizations, good at marketing, good at employer branding, and to take also to seize. And I think I'm very grateful to what you say, that hearing an HR manager talk of speaking on a more technical or technological forum is important, because we will need all these people for the challenges that we are facing. And by making publicity, marketing, a good marketing strategy, a good communication strategy, we make our business, our sector more important and more interesting. And I think we have to work together to be sure that people will arrive and will help us for the solutions we will have to elaborate. You look at the population at Aquafin, and that is not an offense because we have a real white male engineers, technicians profile, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love them all, and but it will, I love them all, but it will be necessary to have also different kind of people in that company because they have other visions on the same topic, on the same subject. And that will be interesting if we want to convince, if we want to work with citizens, with consumers, with environmental organizations, and to inspire them. And then it's necessary to make a shift from a white male engineers company to a little less white male company engineer and a little bit more variety. But that's not enough. It's not only the diversity on sex or on religion, it is much more than that. It is being able to have a very heterogeneous population that looks at, a different kind of views to the same topic. Yes.
Thank you very much to the speakers.